What is poppin' YouTube? Doing my mustache players ahead of the fantasy football playoffs because depth wins you championships. First player is going to be Jackson Smith-Njigba, and I hear you, JSN might already be rostered in league. Looking across, around 55 to 58% rostered on ESPN, Sleeper, and Yahoo leagues. And my thing is, JSN has clearly overtaken Tyler Lockett as the clear wide receiver 2 in the Seattle Seahawks offense. And when we look at the Seahawks schedule, week 14, they're going up against the 49ers this week, 25th against wide receivers. Week 15 versus the Eagles, 32nd against wide receivers. Week 16 at the Titans, 28th against wide receivers, and week 17 versus Steelers, 17th against wide receivers. It's a great little run that JSN can potentially have here. So go target some JSN. Absolutely love that for you if you need some depth at wide receiver. My next stash for you is going to be Kenneth Gainwell. And yes, I don't all the time love to get handcuff running backs as my backups. But right now, Kenneth Gainwell is somewhere around 28 to 35% rostered across leagues. You should not be playing Kenneth Gainwell over DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift is still the clear running back 1. The thing that I continue to see with DeAndre Swift, as I own DeAndre Swift in a bunch of leagues, is that he is not 100% healthy. So as they're coming down the playoff hunt, if for some reason they decide, hey, we need to give DeAndre Swift a little bit of rest with his ankle issue that he's been having in back-to-back weeks, and we're just going to roll out Kenneth Gainwell, I think that could be something that is super beneficial for you. Because when we're looking at the snap share that Kenneth Gainwell has gotten, 31% in week 11, 35% in week 12, and then 54% in week 13, if he hovers right around that 54 to 65% over the rest of the season, just because of DeAndre Swift's injury woes, then I think it could definitely be possible that Kenneth Gainwell could provide really great fantasy football value down the stretch. When we're looking week 15 at the Seahawks, they've given up the 28th most PPR points to running backs. Week 16 versus Giants, 24th. You love to start your lineups against the Giants. Then week 17 versus the Cardinals, 31st against running backs. So absolutely love Kenneth Gainwell down the stretch. Love DeAndre Swift too. So you're not definitely starting Kenneth Gainwell unless something happens to DeAndre Swift. But I think right now it's a great stash opportunity. Go get some Kenneth Gainwell onto your roster. And my next mustache player is going to be Jameis Winston, Mr. 30 for 30 himself. Yes, Derek Carr got knocked out of last week's game with like a concussion rib injury with that huge hit that he took in the game. And Jameis Winston, when he has gotten in there, we know what type of fantasy magic Jameis Winston can provide. When especially he's throwing to wide receivers like Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, A.T. Perry in this offense, an offense where he's got weapons. And especially with Alvin Kamara out of the backfield, I absolutely love Jameis Winston if you're super desperate for some quarterback play, some quarterback upside coming down the stretch. I don't know. I think if you're probably in the playoffs, you probably have already a solid quarterback. But just talking about a stash, I think Jameis Winston could definitely do that for you. My next stash is actually going to be the Rams D. And I wanted to provide a defense for you guys here in this video because a lot of you ask, Caleb, what are some defenses that you like down the stretch? And I always hear you on that. It's always kind of hard for me to tell you because as much as I love to tell you this defense is great down the stretch, things happen. We all know the play when you're playing with a kicker or defense, what can happen. But the Rams defense, they're only about 34% rostered. And down the stretch, they have some really great matchups. They face the Commanders, the Saints, and the Giants. Like, this isn't the best Rams defense we've seen over the last few years, but they're more than capable. Aaron Donald alone can wreck up a game. And so for me, I like when they're going up against the Saints because it's with Jameis Winston or Derek Carr who take a ton of sacks. The Giants, that's a great matchup, as well as the Commanders. Even though the Commanders tend to throw a lot, that's because they're down. Their offense is not great running the ball. So I absolutely love the Rams defense. Another defense I'll throw at you as a stash as we head into the playoffs is definitely the Colts. You got the Steelers, Falcons, and Raiders. Some really good matchups with Mitch Trubisky, Desmond Ridder, and Aiden O'Connell down the stretch. The Colts defense maybe isn't the most prolific defense we've ever seen, but they have some really young talent at the linebacker position and in the secondary. So I absolutely love that. And they're the 27th points allowed right now ranked. So give me the Colts defense and the Rams defense if I need some streamers. Now, talking about some other players that I think would be valuable for you to potentially looking at stashing would be Michael Wilson for the Arizona Cardinals. When we'll put this together, we'll talk about Michael Wilson and Rondale Moore because at this point, yes, Trey McBride has been all the talk with this Arizona Cardinals receiving attack. Hollywood Brown, we continue to want to expect and see more. But when we look, Rondale Moore doesn't necessarily look like a smash play in the playoffs, like someone that you're absolutely going to lead and rely on. The thing is, these Cardinals wide receivers have the second easiest schedule coming down the stretch. Week 15 versus the 49ers, they're the 25th in PPR points allowed to wide receivers. Week 16 at the Bears are 16th, and then week 17 of that Eagles are the 32nd. So this is the thing. The passing attack hasn't been absolutely amazing, but Kyler Murray is throwing the absolute bombs down the field to get the ball involved with Rondale Moore, Hollywood Brown, Michael Wilson Jr., and Michael Wilson is coming back. So Michael Wilson, I assume, returns back to that wide receiver 2 role in week 15. So that's why I think he's a great stash because there's a good chance that he got dropped. So if I had to prioritize it, I would prioritize Michael Wilson over Rondale Moore. If you're playing in a deeper league, I do think there is some value in adding a wide receiver like a Rondale Moore to the end of your bench. And rounding this out is going to be Chris Rodriguez for the Washington Commanders. And yes, do I think Chris Rodriguez is going to come in and save your fantasy football team? Not at all. Brian Robinson has been battling injury, and let's be clear, since week 11, Chris Rodriguez hasn't eclipsed a 17% snap share, so he's not even getting on the field. There might not even be a reason reason for you to be like, Caleb, why am I picking up this guy? But when we're talking about Chris Rodriguez from an actual profile perspective, I know he was a 6th round pick, but when he was at the University of Kentucky, played in 21 games, 400 carries, 18 receptions, 2,000 rushing yards, 18 total touchdowns. This guy is a weapon to be had. So I do think there is potential with Chris Rodriguez in this offense that, let's be clear, they have to score points because their defense is just that bad. That's why Sam Howell has to throw the ball as much as he does. So I think adding a guy like Chris Rodriguez to the end of your bench, that's also another high upside pick that I would be trying to stash if I'm especially playing in a deeper league and need some running back help. I appreciate you guys so much. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll catch you tomorrow where I'm putting out my rest of season rankings video for the playoffs. Peace.